Okay, so we are now ready to start the campaign. With that in mind, I have made the decision that the party is going to be a group that knows each other. They are already going to be in and around Neverwinter, and they've been hired by Gundren Rockseeker, as you can see on the DM screen, to escort a wagon down to the town of Phandelver, or city of Phandelver. I think it's a town. And the quest that they're going to complete is this Deliver Supplies quest, which I've already got open here, and it's called Meet Me in Phandelver. Now, they're not getting any experience points for this, but that's because there's a special provision for this. They are also going to meet Gundren and his escort warrior called Sildar Hallowinter in Phandelver once you arrive, or once the party arrives. And on arrival and delivery, they will receive 10 gold pieces each from Barthen's Provisions in Phandelver. So it's a market that's in Phandelver. The party is starting out in Neverwinter. So with that in mind, what I want to do is assign a token that represents the party. And I typically use a P for that. And what that will do is it will allow the players to see the position on the map as to where they are. Now, the scale of the map is where? 1 hex equals 5 miles. So, for travel, for those DMs who are unaware, I'm going to move this over to the right monitor just for simplicity's sake. I believe that is under the player's handbook reference. And food, drink, movement. All right. So within the player's handbook, and you can see the whole reference manual here when you open it up. But what you can also do is open this up and position it in the exact same spot that you have your story market. So if you ever need to pop open a window, it'll always show up there again. And I'm just going to close those two. Now, what we're focusing on here is travel pace, and specifically because the party is receiving a wagon and they're escorting it. It's possible that they're going to be walking, or it's possible that they're going to be riding, depending on whether they have horses or not. Now, this party, not overly rich, doesn't have a whole lot of money, so chances are they actually don't have any animals available to them. But the mount, or the wagon rather, all right, so wagons can't really travel that fast, but generally the pace is roughly this for a distance. So a normal pace would be 24 miles. Typically what that would mean is from Neverwinter you'd be looking at 4 and a bit hexes. The way I like to play it is that they can move 4 hexes along the road, and then they have to make time and effort to set up camp. It looks like there might actually be a grid of some kind here, but that just may be the way it's moving. So for a full day of travel with good weather, that's something I forgot to set up, is the weather options. Then they should be able to travel a good 24 miles. And I'm assuming non-mounted in this particular case. The cart is probably going to be escorted, or it's going to have an NPC controlling the horse. So the characters are not going to be controlling that in this case. And that backs up because the party is being asked to escort a wagon of goods, not move a wagon of goods. So that's the way I see it. Okay, so the party met Gundren Rockseeker upon seeing a request for employment on a particular travel or work board, bulletin board. And when the party went and talked to Gundren, he handed them, or his request was for them to escort a particular wagon of supplies down to a market store called Barthen's Provisions in Phandelver. And it's approximately 20, 40, 80 or so miles down the road. And unfortunately, this doesn't use kilometers. For those of you who do use kilometers, this is a miles-based. It's a US-based company that produces this thing, so it's all in miles. Excuse me. And upon delivery, he has indicated that each party member will receive 10 gold, and which is relatively straightforward, common for an escort request of this type, and may have additional work when they get to Phandelver, and in helping him secure some mining resources and whatnot. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself as the DM. So, as we can see on the DM screen, I've got the P referencing the player party, a P on the player map for those of you looking at the player screen, representing the party, and it's hovering over Neverwinter. So, the party is going to make the decision of, let's see, they're going to walk, they're going to escort the horse and buggy or the wagon with the supplies by foot, figuring it'll allow them to keep a better perspective on things, if you will, or eye out for things. And generally in good weather, they figure they'll probably get 20 to 24 miles. On bad weather, probably get, I would say, no more than 15 to 18 miles. So I will make the DM decision of stating 15 for bad, 20 for good, means they travel 3 hexes in bad, 4 hexes in good. Okay. So, I am going to very quickly pull up the weather table, because there is weather capabilities in here. So, actually, no, I'm going to put these over here. Get rid of that guy. All right. So as the DM, I like to... Wow. The weather window seems to be slightly... There we go. It just took a moment to load everything up. So, it's the morning of the day they are departing. It is currently 10 degrees Fahrenheit, slightly cooler than normal, so it's a bit of a chilly day. In theory, there's no wind, so there's no breeze, so hence a little bit of the chill is just kind of settling in there. There's a little bit of light rain or light snowfall, which would go along with that. So there's an overcast look. There's a little bit of light rain at 10 degrees. There's no wind, however, so it's just like a slow drizzle as they progress through Neverwinter streets and the hustle and bustle of all of the people moving about, preparing for their day. Gundren gave them a lead for the horse, so one person will have to lead the horse forward. There is spots to sit in the wagon, but the wagon is very heavily laden, and the party themselves not entirely convinced. Let's make a roll for that. Let's see. Yeah, they're not entirely convinced that the horse would have the strength to haul additional weight along with the wagon. So one person is going to lead, and we'll go with Grow as the one who's taken the lead on that particular case. He's the most familiar with animals, has the greatest affinity, so he's able to better control the animal through his druidic skills, even though he doesn't actually have animal handling capabilities. So I'm going to have Grow roll an animal handling check to see how well he's going to do. Oops, apparently I don't need to double roll, so... Oh, I must have had the advantage button clicked by accident from the previous video. So, alright. So, he's struggling a little bit. They're still getting used to each other, is the way that we can see it. But eventually he does get the horse moving. And the party took the party a good hour hour and a half or so to actually get through Neverwinter and get out the one of those two southern gates. And they begin to progress down the road. So it's in the middle of the day, so let's load up the encounters table. Ooh, an encounter right off. All right. So no sooner do they leave town that they start to hear rumors of goblins sort of raiding the highway here, but they don't see anything initially. It's not until they're probably a good 10 to 15 miles out from Neverwinter before the party actually runs into any particular issue. And with that in mind, we are going to generate a set of random encounter here. All right. And for the DM, as you can see, it's already populated the experience points. It has already populated the challenge rating, which actually could be a bit of an issue for this particular party. We'll see. We shall see. And it has gone through and created a placement group for us, which, because this is a world map, there's not necessarily the option to actually place them all here. The scale would just be a little bit construed. So there are two options. One, we can run this as Theater of the Mind, or two, we can run this on a custom map. Now let's see. Is there any map? Now, which maps do I have loaded? I might not have all of the supplementary maps loaded. I've got a few, but I do have some extras. But I'm going to, due to memory constraints, I'm going to try to minimize what I'm actually using. So let's see, is there a field? Yeah, all right. No, okay, so I'm going to do Theater of the Mind in this case. And which is kind of unfortunate, but don't worry, we'll get into the map-based combat shortly. All right, so very quickly, with this little button here, if you look on the player screen or in the combat tracker here, you'll see that the combat NPCs will be plopped onto the DM side, but they do not become visible on the player side. Now, because this is an experience-based encounter, I'm going to move this over to here and just set that aside for the moment. And the next task is to actually get the party into the combat tracker. And you'll note I'm dragging using the token. The reason I do that is because the token is what gets linked to the map. And there we go. Now the NPC or the NPCs already had initiative rolled for us, so that's not going to be something we have to worry about. But now the party knows something up, because they're, if you look over on the player screen again, they're now part of the combat tracker, so they know something's happened. But nothing has shown up in their chat, so this gives you as the DM an element of surprise. Now, I'm not going to make this a surprise combat. I'm gonna, well, actually, let's see. Let's do a wisdom or perception roll on the party. See if anybody notices. Yes, somebody does notice. So, off in the distance, Grow, who's actually got pretty decent perception, notices that there's all of a sudden a group of 5 goblins, or creatures, running towards them. And I will make them visible on the combat tracker, because it's easier to actually target the NPC that way. And warns the party. Quickly secures the horse so that it doesn't go bolting. And I will make a dexterity check with Grow to determine if... Now, do I have convenience? No. Okay. With that particular skill, so dexterity. He thinks he's got the rope secured fairly snugly under a rock, but we'll see if the horse is going to be smart enough to realize it's not necessarily secured in this case. So at this point, as the DM, I'm going to call for the party to roll initiative. Now on the player screen, on the main character tab, there is the initiative box here. And what I'm going to do is double click on that for each player. And Grow has gone first. And here we go. And that's going to set the combat capabilities up. So Goblin 3 gets to go first. And he is going to, let's see. He has the capability to do scimitar, short bow. He's going to make an attack with the short bow on Grow as he's leading the horse. So I'm going to very quickly, target Grow. And you can see how I did that on the DM screen. I grabbed this target feature and I went through and dropped it over top of Grow. And you can see here that he has now got Grow targeted. Now his attack capabilities are under this offense option here. And he's going to make a ranged attack on Grow. Let's see. That is a hit. And this is probably going to kill Grow right off. No. However, it has very heavily damaged Grow. Grow's not overly happy with that. These guys do not have multi-attack, but they do have nimble escape, so we shall see. Okay, and Goblin continues to rush forward, but took a moment to stop, take a shot at Grow, and continue on moving forward. All right, so using the next actor, which I totally forgot to actually set. Oops. Come on. Sometimes this can be a bit finicky. I think I actually have to drop it. All right, there we go. So, for those of you who were looking at the player screen, you probably just heard a chime. I did enable desktop sounds. That chime is an indication to the player that it is their turn. That's actually the first time I've heard the chime, because I've always played it with the sounds turned off. So, Grow is going to take a look at his options here. And let's say that the goblins aren't entirely certain of the party. They're slightly frightened, so they are kind of clustering together a little bit. But what do I have for actions? So, no, I forgot to prepare. So I'm able to, actually I'm able to prepare pretty much all of these. And I think this is the one that I'm going to want to use. At this point, we'll say that the goblins are within a 50-foot reach of the party. They got that close before they were spotted. And Grow is going to target all of the creatures because this is essentially an area of attack within the 15-foot cube stretched out. So he can pretty much attack all 5 if they're right behind each other. So to actually go through and target somebody, let's see. That is going to be a bit tricky, I believe. Yeah, there we go. So all I did there is I control clicked with the left mouse button on the actual goblins. And we can see here that Goblin 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are now selected. And I'm going to set that to action. I'm going to make the roll, and I only hit once. Now, on the DM side, let's see. We have 1, 2 successes and 3 failures. For Goblin 1, Goblin 4, Goblin 5, they failed. For Goblin 2, Goblin 3, they succeeded. And with that, I'm going to roll for damage. That is nice damage. And very, very quickly, 4 of the goblins are already down. So you can see how easy Fantasy Grounds makes things when it comes to an actual combat encounter. That only leaves Goblin 2 available. Now Grow is going to pass his turn, and when he figures he's done, I forgot my own little thing. I don't want preparation, I want combat, so he cast a first level spell. Alright. So, once Grow indicates that he is done, or says that he is actually done, then what he can do is click this. Right, because I am actually doing all of the party members here. That more or less put Goblin 5 as next, which is... that is actually the next one. So Goblin 5 is next according to the DM screen, because the players don't know who actually gets to go first. I keep forgetting about that. The party sees their own initiative, but they don't see the NPC initiative, so they don't know the order that is in. And the only reason the NPCs are there for easy targetability if you're doing a Theater of Mind. Okay, so Goblin 5 is dying, so he can't do anything. So as a DM, I have to move to the next Goblin. Goblin 1 is also dying, so he also cannot do anything. Now Clever is able to go. So, Clever. Your list of actions are a short bow, and you do have 20. I do remember giving you those. And you have 2 daggers, if I recall. Yes, you do. Okay. So, I'm going to target Goblin 2, the only remaining goblin that's up. And I'm going to attack with the short bow here. Not quite yet fully in range. Now, this window here, you have to double click. And that is a miss. And you'll note that the player doesn't know that that's a miss. That's for the DM to tell the player whether they hit or missed. And the player saw their own roll, so it's up to them to judge whether they want to make use of features like luck or anything like that. But it still adds a bit of risk to its use, because the player's not entirely certain until you tell them whether they hit or miss, because the goblin's armor is actually 15, so they just missed in this case. Alright, so that would be Clover's turn. Goblin 4 is dying. And now Duldor gets to go, and he is our resident cleric. So he's going to use Sacred Flame on Goblin 2. Being in a cantrip means he doesn't have to prepare it. And he's going to make an attack. That goblin failed, and he's going to take the full brunt of the damage. And as you can see, this whole encounter has gone through fairly smoothly. Grow has taken some hits, and he's hurting a little bit. But as per the heavy damage here, and on the DM screen, you'll see that the party sheet is also updated with the health of that particular player. And now the party is able to recover or settle down from the actual thing. Now, the way I tend to like to play this as a DM is we're not done the combat round, and I always like to make sure that the round itself is done. So Duldor just Sacred Flamed the last goblin. Now, Duldor's turn is done. Fairfarn is next. And being a Dragonborn, he's not really going to have too much that he has to do here. He's just going to take a look around to make sure that there's no additional goblins that are, approaching. And then goblin to goblin, and then the round is done. So, something you may have noticed, none of the initiatives were re-rolled for any of the party when I did that. And that's because I have set up the combat tracker, the combat tracker to not roll re-roll initiatives when the town is finished, or when the round is finished, rather. I don't know where I got the word town. Anyway, okay, so that is the first encounter. Now I'm just going to clean up here. This is really the only time-consuming part when it comes to, there we go, cleaning up. As the DM, you can see that Grow has suffered 5 wounds. Everyone else will see that he has heavy damage. Because we're not sharing those numbers across the rest of the party, they see that he's taken an arrow to, let's say, the shoulder, and it's still embedded into him. So maybe Farron as the last thing helped try to actually get that arrow out, and rolled a medicine check. I don't know why it does that. And was sufficient in being able to pull the arrow out and stop the wound in this particular case. The combat is now done. The party decides that they're going to quickly move out of the area, and they progress to 2, 3, 4 to where they are going to camp for that particular night. Just a little copse of woods off the side of the road there, and set up their tents, their bedrolls, whatever. It's still a little bit of a light rain, so it hasn't really stopped. And I generally do the weather once per day, just because I don't like micromanaging the weather when it comes to stuff like that. As well as in encounters, I don't tend to, if the party's had an encounter during the day, I don't tend to throw them an encounter at night, unless they're well past level 1. Level 1 characters are very, very squishy. So throwing too much of them at once, not necessarily the best thing if you want that party to be able to progress through the story a little bit. Alright, so for the evening's rest, party set up camp. They've had their rations, so everyone should deduct 1 ration from their inventory. So that'll be 9 rations. And I'm going to show everyone a little bit of a trick that I like to use. Where is this guy's rations? 5 rations. Ooh, you're going to need to do some hunting. That'll be 4 rations. Now whose did I not deal with? That would be you. So 9. Alright. So as the player, what I tend to like to do is I like to organize various things. And you'll see here that you have a backpack. Well, it shouldn't be empty. There's a number of items here that should have a location. So now you'll notice that anything that goes into the backpack here is automatically being organized into the item, and I'll show you that in a moment. Nice small. Number of things hanging off the belt here. Let's go shoulder slung. Rations. How do you only have 2? Oops. And see that everything's showing up in the backpack here. So yeah, that's 3 rations, not that should be 4 rations. Did he have 2 sets of rations? No, I must have reduced that too much. Alright, scale mail. Worn, tinderbox, backpack. I tend to go right hand and backpack for that. So you'll see here that everything's been organized into the backpack, on the belt, over the shoulder, and the quivers are in there. Things like that. Now, the reason for that is if you drop the backpack for some reason, all the items that are in it automatically come off your character and your weight drops. So we put that back on. It's now carried. Your weight goes back up. And the reason for that is it's very handy that if you lose an item and that item is holding more items, you've lost all the items associated with it, and it becomes easy to manage from a carrying, not carrying, lost, or whatever. And so over time, I'll go through and do that to the other 3 characters as well. But I just wanted to point that out from a player perspective, that it's actually quite useful to go through and set up an organization to your inventory. All right, so the party's going to go through a long rest. Now, how you do a long rest is done through the DM. And it's done through the combat tracker specifically. And essentially, it's this menu here. If you click that, there are various options that show up. So there's an effects option down here at the bottom, and I don't know why it's slightly off the screen. There's an initiative roll. So if you wanted to go through and roll initiative, this is what you can do. I do not know why this is a padlock for the rest features, but there's a short rest and a long rest. So a short rest is typically for an hour, and any skill that is used that has been properly configured, when you execute this rest, if it recovers after a short rest, then they'll be able to make use of that. And it will automatically re-enable that feature or that skill so that it's usable for the character in the combat sheet. At the same time, a long rest is your full 8 hours, and we've already set up a watch through the party window, such that Duldor is going to be first, then Clever, then Grow, then Fairfarn. And what'll happen is I'm just going to open up Grow's main tab here, and you'll see at the bottom that he has suffered 5 wounds. And you should notice that this goes away during a long rest. So execute a long rest, and ta-da! Party's taken a long rest. He has recouped all of his damage, or all of the damage that he had taken. Okay, so the morning awakens once again. The sun comes up in the morning, and let's see what the weather is going to be for today. I'm going to move these out a little bit further so I can just do a quick roll. Okay, still a little bit of a light rain, but the wind is now strong. It is normal for the season from a temperature, so it's fairly warm. We'll say this is midsummer, but there's pretty much a strong wind, and because this is now the second day where the rain has come into play, I'm going to say that the party's only going to be able to move 3 squares due to the roads being a little bit more muddy, stuff like that, so it's a little bit more difficult to do. I'm going to do my wilderness check for the day. Come on. There we go. Or my encounter check, and there's no encounter for today. So the party is able to make it to here without any issues, besides the wind being quite strong. Let's see. I'm going to roll a die 4, determine what direction it's actually coming from. So let's say it's coming directly from the east, or north, so it's behind them. Give them a little bit of a push, but not really. The horse doesn't have to do as much work, so it's well rested, but because of the difficulty of the road, that sort of counters the rested aspect of it. And again, it's still overcast. And the party is starting to feel a little bit miserable because they're soaked. They're now damp. Well, they were damp from the previous day, but I didn't make too big of a deal of it. But right now they're starting to feel quite uncomfortable because everything's now soaked through. And they were able to dry off for the campfire during the previous night's camp, but they're once again soaked. All right, and the party managed to get through to here today before they ran into their encounter, but because they didn't have a hello. There we go. Let's do an evening encounter. And it's a quiet evening. So the party once again settles down. I'll deal with the rations after. In fact, I will show you why that's useful for here. Show inventory, rations. Where are you? 1, 2, 3, 4. 24. So you can't actually change anything here, but you can very quickly see who has what. And why do you have 2 still? What is up with that, Durham? Oh, that's 9 candles. That was supposed to be 2 candles. Where did the rations go? No, you get 9 rations. Okay. So you do have 9 candles. Alright. 8. Alright. Clever. You have 3. So we may have one of the party members go through and do a hunting, see if they can find any food. Okay, so now the party has gone through another night, uneventful. Let's see if the weather's changed for them. So the weather's overnight. The weather disappeared, and the wind died off. I guess the wind blew away all the bad weather, essentially, pushing it off to a different direction. And once again, its temperatures returned to normal. So you got a very nice, comfortable sleep, and everyone's well rested. So once again, we'll do a long rest, although you don't necessarily have to in this case. And the party has decided to see if they can make up for lost time, but the roads themselves are still a little bit wet. They haven't yet dried off. So I'm going to make a decision roll as to whether... Oops. Yeah, okay, they may be able to push through. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So halfway through the day, they come to the intersection where they make their way off towards Phandelver. And at this point, I'm not sure why that popped up there, but okay. I generally have this event kick off after they've made the turn, just simply because it's nice and convenient for them. They're a little bit closer to town. Although, it's funny that they say about half a day when it's down to here. Okay. So the party gets to here, and it looks like we've got a canned encounter, so I don't need to roll today. So you post that in there, and then you read it out if you wish, or just let the players themselves read it out. And here's your encounter. Oh, I forgot to do something. These random goblins dropped into there. Okay. Now, is there going to be an element of surprise today? No. Nice perception there, Gro. All right. So, I'm going to once again populate the combat tracker. Again, the party doesn't know that things have been populated, so you're ready to go. And if the party decides to move closer, you can pop that up, indicate that there appears to be the saddlebags of this particular thing have been looted and whatnot. So essentially what the party has come across is literally a battle scene. There are 2 dead horses that are sprawled out on the road ahead of you. And happen to be blocking the path, so they may have to be moved before you can actually go around. And both of the horses are peppered with feathers. And if let's say the party moved closer and they took a closer look at the contents of what the horses had on them, so in this case it would be saddlebags, there's definitely a looted set of saddlebags here. And I'm going to have one of the members pick up this leather map case. It's empty, but so let's say Farron is going to pick up the map case. So he's just going to open up the items inventory there, grab the icon for that, and drop that into his inventory there, and then just update the name to represent that he now has a map case in his inventory. As he finishes picking up and slots the map case into his backpack, Grow all of a sudden calls out, "We're under attack!" So the party now has to re-roll initiative. Now, you can actually have the players do it all, or I'm going to have to move the combat tracker, make it a little bit more accessible here. So what I'm going to do is flip. Oops, I'm going to temporarily move this to there. Move this here. And then move this back. Move this back. And then lock it back into place. Let's see if that gives me something a little bit different to deal with. Alright, so I don't want NPCs, I want to roll PC initiative. So that's another option that you can do in order to deal with something like a surprise round, or deal with someone's gone out and they're stepped AFK, stuff like that. You can actually go through and do the roll for them to get the initial campaign or the initial thing set up. Now, that would only be useful if you're going to have the players go through and roll their own initiatives from that point forward. Otherwise, the players are going to start feeling like they're really just there for the slave aspect of it and not have anything to do. So, for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to control the initiative from the DM side, just simply because I don't want to have to go individually load up each character sheet and go through and run roll initiative. It just simplifies things for me. All right, so Clever gets to go first, and the round is reset. Excuse me. And now Clever is ready to go. So Clever, do I have you open? Yes, I do. Your actions here. She's once again. You'll note that there's an arrow missing here. She did not state that she was going to pick it up, but generally, one arrow you typically won't get back. So to make this easier for the players to deal with, because once again, this is a theater of the mind run through, and it's intentionally a theater of the mind by the module. There is no map for the spot. There are player supplied maps that you can download and put into Fantasy Grounds, but I didn't do that for this particular scenario. All right, so she's going to target Goblin 1 and shoot at that goblin, and summarily misses. All right, and she's going to move behind a tree to get some cover. Goblin 1 is going to attempt to return fire. And I'm just going to minimize. Interesting. It's because that's her turn, so it automatically opens that up. And that goblin's going to try to attack Clever. Now, Clever is behind cover. So Clever, oops, not the right screen, needs to add a modifier. Oops. Yeah. So now that's for an attack. So rather, the goblin has to add a modifier if he's going to continue to attack Clever. Why are you not targeting her? Hello. Why is that not targeting? So typically you can just drag and drop, but I'm not sure what's going on here. Might still be a few bugs to be dealt with here. Now I saw that something got moved here, but I'm not sure as to why that is. So what happens if I do this? Oh, okay, so she's just targeting herself. And let's just untarget, see if that's the reason for this. No. Yeah, I'm not entirely certain. So there's a different way that you can do this. You can actually go through and roll it that way. And that was a miss. And again, I used a short bow. So the next one is Goblin 7. He's also going to, oops, 1 second here. Once again, she's behind cover from his angle. I'm going to drop that on Clever. And that is a hit. So Clever suffers a little bit of damage. Luckily, it's only a few hit points. Okay. Now you'll note that that damage did not apply to Clever. So what you can actually do is drag that 3 over and drop it on top of Clever. Next is going to be Goblin 4. He's going to attack Duldor with a short bow, because it's not quite in range yet. And that is going to be a hit, doing 5 points of damage to Duldor. Now Duldor gets to go. So Duldor is going to run at Goblin 4 and attack Goblin 4. So Duldor is going. Now, the reason I'm clicking up there is it's not going to necessarily apply for the attacks, but definitely during combat it would apply. So Duldor is going to Sacred Flame that particular goblin rather than rush for it. And I don't believe that goblin takes any damage. Yeah, okay. Target must succeed, and there's no damage if they succeed. Okay. Alright, so that pretty much covers his turn. Now Grow. Grow is very upset. And Grow got all of his spells back. But they're not grouped in this particular case. So he is going to, that's really only going to do any of that. So he's going to run up to Goblin 1 and attack that with the scimitar. And that is a miss. His party is not doing well. And then Fairfarn is also going to, let's see. He's going to haul out his longbow and take a shot at Goblin 1. Oops, I didn't want to execute the attack. So no, that doesn't apply. That should have been the longbow. I don't know why the screen jumps when it does that. So that is a hit. And that was a... Okay, so that goblin took some significant damage. Okay, so Goblin 14 is going to attack Fairfarn. Oops. With an arrow. And that is a miss. Okay, so that is the end of that particular round. I'm now starting the next round. Alright, so now the second round is kicked off. Clover is going to once again target Goblin 1. So, 1 second here. There we go. And Clever, rather, not Clover. I keep calling her Clover. Maybe I'll change the name to Clover. Alright, this time she hits. And does 5 points of damage to Goblin 1, who takes that arrow in the face, and as a result, right in the eye, knocking it down to the ground. And from a DM's perspective, this wasn't clear when I first started DMing, but NPCs don't get to make saving throws. So dying means that NPC is technically dead. Now, the reason why Fantasy Grounds puts in dying is because theoretically, you as the DM could allow a player to stabilize a particular NPC who might happen to have information, and the party wants to stabilize and glean information from that particular party member. Then it gives you the option to do so rather than flat out dead. Now, there is the chance that an NPC will go completely dead in the sense that they've suffered so much damage that it exceeds both their total hit points and the negative value of that total hit points. Okay. All right. So yeah, I could have rolled that a little bit differently, but I'm not overly worried about that. Okay. So, and when you're unsure of a particular rule, this will actually link you to a particular page. So if you click these, generally it will do so. All right, we are in Goblin Ambush. There we go. Yeah, this is the one. All right. Okay. So that finishes her turn. You are dying. Goblin 7. Let's make an attack on Clover again. Now let's say that you're melee range, so let's go with the scimitars. And misses. Goblin 4. Let's make an attack on Duldor. That's going to be a hit. And Duldor probably just got knocked unconscious. Nope, he suffered moderate damage. Okay. Okay, and now it's Duldor's turn. So, Duldor. You have how many hit points left? You are down to 5. No, I haven't applied the damage yet, so you will become unconscious. There you go. Alright, so you can't really do anything. You are unconscious, which means you need to make a saving throw. So good. I wanted to see show you what happens when a party member becomes unconscious. When it becomes their turn, they have to make a death save. And in this case, they have succeeded. And so on the player screen, you can see that there on the bottom of his character sheet that he has 1 save token. Now, one of the other party members could theoretically go over and stabilize him, and in fact, that's what Grow is going to do. So Grow, he didn't take stabilize capability, but does he have Spare the Dying? No, that would be a cleric that has Spare the Dying. So our cleric is now down. This is why you generally have 2 healers. Alright, he's actually going to try to finish this. At this point, the last of the goblins have moved into an area where he now can make an attack. We'll say that is the case. So, he's going to target all 3 of these. Goblin 4, 5, 6. And then roll an attack on that. Apparently he still has Goblin 1 hit. Okay, and some damage. Nice chunk of damage. So the rest of the goblins are now mostly unconscious with 1 essentially going. Now you see here, I also wanted to show this effect. Essentially this means that this NPC took automatic damage and automatically failed their death save. Now typically that only applies to PCs, not to NPCs. So it really isn't applicable in this case, but I just wanted to point that out. Now, Fairfarn is going to release and attack that one. So Fairfern, he's going to use his breath weapon. I'm going to show you how this works. So he's going to cast the breath weapon. Interesting. Why did that not roll damage? Because it's not doing an attack roll. All right. So the DC is for saving throw. The saving throw equals 8 plus your Constitution modifier plus your proficiency bonus. So 8 plus 3, which is 11, plus your proficiency bonus, which is 2. So that is 13. So back to actions. And that should be 8 plus ability, which is con, plus proficiency, plus bonus. So there's no bonus. All right. Have fun success. And this is, it's kind of a ranged attack, I guess. But I'm not sure why it's making use of that. Sometimes debugging can come into play. So you cast it. Why won't you actually make the save? So in this case, it's a 13. Magic is yes. It's not triggering that goblin to make a saving throw. So I'm going to have to look into that. So I'm going to have to circle back to that and deal with that. So if that's the case, he's just going to shoot it with a longbow for now. And that's going to be a miss. All right. Now Goblin 14 is the only one left. He's going to attack Fairnfarn. He is now up close and personal. Moving into place. Or rather moving into position. And hits. So that's the other thing, is you can drop the damage right on top of Fairfarn, rather than rolling it, just double clicking it and rolling it. Okay. Now for the start of the next round. That would be Clever. Gonna make, she's gonna rush in and make a short sword attack. So Goblin 1 is no longer there. Oops. And Goblin 14 is the only one around. Stop. There we go. Okay. That is a hit. And now that goblin is dying. So that ends the combat, but you're done, you're done, you're done. What's going to happen here is Duldor has just rolled his other thing, so I wanted to point that out. When a player is unconscious, their character will automatically roll a death save. The reason it didn't do it the first time is because I hadn't actually applied the damage and knocked that character down. So in this case, he has 1 success, 1 failure, but Grow is going to come in and stabilize. So what stabilizing means is that Grow is going to wander over and run a medicine check here. Definitely succeeds. And therefore, the effect on Grow is now going to be stabilized. Sorry, on Duldor is going to be stable. And what that will do is that will prevent any additional death saves. So just to give you an idea of that, if we continue to go through and we come down to here, you'll see that no automatic death save was rolled. That's because he is now stable. And it makes these, on the player screen, it makes the death saves a moot point. All right. So, nobody has any healing. Okay. All right. So, you now have 1 hit point. So, eventually Duldor wakes up after becoming stable. And you guys go through a short rest here, so I'm going to run that through. So a short rest means that you're going to roll 1 hit die to recover some hit points. And you'll see that he is now recovered a little bit in the way of his hit points back. But you'll also see that there are no additional hit die available for him to roll because he's level 1. And as a result, he's going to have to go through and recover that hit die during a long rest. So the party themselves, which by the way is now down here on the player screen, is going to camp. Let's say the encounter did occur here, and the party managed to move to here before they had to camp for the night. During a long rest is when the rest of the party is going to recover their hit points. But let me go through and clean up the combat tracker here. So the way I could have played that is that the goblins should have actually started requesting parley, if you will, when half the party was destroyed. But I actually wanted to go through and keep the goblins mostly in play until one of the party members was knocked down and unconscious, and to show you some of the other capabilities. I still got to fix that breath weapon, so I'm not sure why that isn't working. So let's just say, for the sake of simplicity in this case, during a search of the goblins, the party managed to find a reference to Cragmaw Hideout, which is just north of the road. Now, the party can choose to go there now or continue on to go down to Phandelver. In this case, I'm going to make a wisdom roll for the party, and I'm going to do this on the DM side so I don't have to do it individually. And the party has decided to take the supplies back to Phandelver and then come back, and deal with Cragmaw Castle. And the reason they're going to do that is that way they don't have to run the risk of potentially losing the supplies to any other types of goblins or anything like that. And what they found is one of the goblins had a little map on them, very crudely drawn, that shows the high road on it, the Tribor Trail here, and a walking path of some sorts up towards Cragmaw Castle. That way the party can continue to go through and look at what's going on with that particular part of the module. And this here is a helpful hint as to what the goblins will know down here at the bottom. And this is primarily for the goblins in the lair. Right. And that's for the, I don't know why this is here when that actually is information about the other, the actual ambush. Okay. So, party's going to rest here, get a long rest. And now you'll see that Duldor on the player screen has recovered his hit die. There's a certain number of hit die that you can actually recoup over a specific period of time. And once again, let's do a encounters check. No encounter for today, which is going to be good. And the weather. A little bit of a wind, no precipitation, and no change in temperature. So, in general, the party wakes up to a slightly breezy morning. Takes care of their rations. So that's now 2 days of rations gone, so I got to knock 2 off. So that means 6, and the party's going to have to buy rations when they get to Phandelver in order to recoup. Otherwise, Clever here isn't going to be able to have any rations of her own. She's going to have to start sharing. So 6. And none of the party members really have the ability to hunt. There is a survival trait on Grow, but he hasn't really made use of that yet. Okay. All right. So 1, 2, 3. So now that the party has arrived at Phandelver, I'm going to stop this video here, and the next video will be what goes on within Phandelver. And it'll be a brief introduction, because technically the party should have run Cragmaw Hideout first, but I'm going to play this just slightly different, just so that there's a little bit of a difference to how a DM might actually run it going forward. Okay, so with that in mind, this is going from Neverwinter to Phandelver. This is the Mines of Phandelver campaign, episode 1. And I will see you in episode 2.